welcome to the podcast, which will be a little bit different this episode. I'm going to be showing you a little bit how my mind works on a daily basis. So I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and by digging into memories and listening to these podcasts, it has inspired me to sit down now and record my thoughts. I'm going to look at how Greek mythology can be used as an inspiration and guidance to anybody who has their own small business. To be honest, this is going to be like a bit of light relief for me. I can get a bit overwhelmed sometimes with other work, so it just gives me something to put in mind to, other than trying to avoid anxiety and stress thinking about work 24/7. So, as I mentioned, I listen to lots of podcasts, and one of my favourites is a guy called Blind Boy, and recently he's been on kind of a Greek mythology binge where he expertly deconstructs and compares various Greek mythology to modern life on his podcast, and you should definitely give him a listen. So it got me thinking about Greek mythology and what I know off the top of my head, which isn't a lot. It's basically how many TV shows or movies I've watched down the years that have been based on Greek mythology. So the basics really, so the Odyssey, the Iliad, Prometheus, Zeus, Poseidon, so on. Any of the old Ray Harryhausen stop-motion movies, which to me as a child were absolutely fascinating, and still are really. And when I was young, Ulysses 31, cartoon that I used to watch, is a 1980s French, Japanese, sci-fi, fantasy cartoon, and it was based on the Odyssey, on other little bits of Greek mythology, but mainly the Odyssey. Ulysses is the Latin word for Odysseus. So I didn't realise when I was watching it at the time, it was setting me up to be sci-fi, fantasy lover. It first started, I think, in 1981, so there's no way I could have watched it then. It was first shown and released in the UK mid-80s, so I doubt I watched it then either. And it was repeated in the early 90s, which is probably when I watched it. There's no way I could remember, even if I did watch it when it came out early. I was far too young to remember that. So early 90s, if you fast forward about 10 years from the early 90s, I'd already become a fan of Daft Punk at that time from their first album. And then in 2001, they released the second album called Discovery. And part of that album, they released a series of videos, which is like cartoons that all kind of joined together into a movie. And those cartoons were heavily influenced by Ulysses 31. Now, the band themselves, they'll cite Albator 84, which is another French-Japanese animation, but I think it was just French, we didn't see it in the UK. That was their main influence, but undoubtedly Ulysses 31 was an influence on these videos. There's lots of characters in there, and even some of the music sounds a little bit like the theme tune. Let's see if we can play the theme tune. Let's have a listen. Got my headphones on. Let's have a listen and see if we can talk through it. Okay, yeah. So Ulysses 31. So before the main theme, they did this thing where they basically told you the story of what happened. So they tell the story, and then the main theme starts. There's the blue people that are in Daft Punk's videos. That's Poseidon. He's pissed off because Ulysses killed the Cyclops. It's quite dark, really. Like some bits of it were quite dark.
You are alive, my son.
You are alive, my son. So here's the main theme. So you're 9 years old and this comes on, you're like, yeah, baby. Woo! Nearly fell off my fucking chair. It's brilliant. So he had like a laser gun that was also a lightsaber. They definitely had some inspiration from Star Wars, but that's cool as fuck when you're a kid and he's got a laser pistol that's got a lightsaber that comes out of it as well. The Blue People again. Daft Punk definitely use them in their videos. A lot of people thought this was made by a band called Devo in the 80s. Like this bit now. Sounds like Devo. You can understand why people thought it was them. It was made by two guys, Denny Crockett and Ike Egan. That's Denny Crockett singing. Oh yeah. So yeah, Denny Crockett, Ike Egan, they were the guys that made that. There's another guy named Shuki Levi who made loads and loads of theme tunes in the 80s. Like I think he did like Mask, maybe Thundercats and things like that. So these are all legendary guys who made all the theme tunes to these things. So I actually watched the first episode with the little one the other day just because I knew I was going to do this. It's quite funny because Ulysses is like a Greek god in the 31st century. He's like, he's surprised, but he's named Ulysses. His son's named Telemachus. His ship's called the Odyssey. He's just left a place called Troy, but he's like, Poseidon? That's weird. It's I think because of the translation from probably French or Japanese to English, and then obviously it's a kids' cartoon. They just gloss over things and rush through the story, which it's more on my level really, so that's great. So Daft Punk, sci-fi, fantasy, Greek mythology. At the age I was then, that's like crack cocaine to me. So that's really got me into all of this, and it all kind of links together. There's a load of movies as well that I've watched down the years that are based on the Odyssey or the Iliad. So obviously Ulysses, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, the Coen Brothers film, Troy, obviously, 2001 Space Odyssey, obviously. One that isn't so obvious is Chris Nolan's Interstellar. It's loosely based on the Odyssey. There's lots and lots of stories, modern stories and takes on Homer's work. So having the Odyssey on my mind, I thought, fuck it, I'm going to watch rewatch some documentaries and movies. And while I was watching, I was thinking, this is great. This is actually great advice, life advice and business advice. So that got my mind whirring. And to be honest, the most likely thing, in my opinion, what Homer was intending, he was warning people, don't be arrogant, don't be impatient, don't be disloyal. And there's lots of very strong themes of humility. Don't dwell too much on failures, keep moving forward. I think there's a lot of that in a lot of Greek mythology. So all of the cartoons, the 80s movies, the modern movies, Daft Punk, Blind Boy, all culminating to now, which is me trying to run a small business. I'm going to compare the two. I'm going to compare everything together and try and make a podcast out of it. So I can't just sit and relax with various things running from my brain. I'm going to take a look at the Odyssey, and a metaphorical look at the Odyssey and how that can be used as inspiration for any small business owner. The Odyssey is an epic poem by the ancient Greek poet Homer, and it's a heroic tale. The hero is Odysseus, and the story is his journey home to Ithaca after the Trojan War. And along the way he encounters various gods and mythical creatures and things like the nymph Calypso, the Cyclops, the Enchantress Circe, the Sirens, the monsters Scylla, the sun god Helios, and obviously Athena, Zeus, Poseidon. They're all involved and making it difficult for him or helping him out or whatever. And he has to use his wits and perseverance to eventually get back home to his wife Penelope. And it's just like, it's a demonstration of heroism, human spirit, power of the gods. And I'm going to take a look at it from the perspective of a small business owner. So, the word, the Odyssey, was coined after the name of the main character, Odysseus, from Homer's poem. And since then, it's been synonymous with epic journeys and adventures, blah blah blah. Just like your business. If you have stumbled upon this podcast, and you're a student of Greek mythology and you just found it because of the title, I wouldn't use this podcast for any of your studies. I'm just an idiot. Decided to record some of my rambling thoughts. I will refer to the poem as a metaphor for any small business in a totally uneducated manner, so don't take this as gospel. If you drink, it might be a good time to sit down with your favourite tipple. If you partake in any other totally legal substances, it might be a good time to bust those out. If you're totally sober, I apologise. Please don't judge me. I just got a little bit carried away with this one. So, the Odyssey is an ancient Greek poem by the legendary poet Homer. It's referred to as a poem, although I think most people would recognise it as a story. It's just a narrative story. It's written in poetic form, the original. They call it an epic poem. It's called an epic poem and traditionally referred to as a poem because that's just the style it was written in, but we just know it as a story. It tells the story of Odysseus. It's basically Odysseus' journey home after the Trojan War. So the journey is a 10-year journey. It's filled with lots of different adventures and challenges and encounters with gods and mythical creatures. But the Trojan War itself, in the Iliad, the other story, that's 10 years long as well. So this is a 20-year journey we're talking about, which could possibly be the amount of time it takes for your own business to be where you want it to be. So the podcast might sound a bit mad, especially if you don't know the Odyssey or Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which we'll get to. I like them both. I think the Odyssey and Homer's other poem, the Iliad, both have lots of good lessons in them, as well as obviously being really great stories, which has been proven down the years, all the different versions and films and other stories that have been based on them. Now, I wouldn't attempt to read or understand the original texts. Me personally, for starters, they're in ancient Greek, but even if you translated them, it would be so complicated because some of the references that he will have made or the words used, I just wouldn't understand. There's a good translation if you want to read it by somebody called Emily Wilson, so that's a good English translation, or you can listen to it as an audiobook, or watch any of the documentaries, or the 1997 TV miniseries, The Odyssey, which is great, but you can watch it on YouTube actually. All the episodes are on YouTube, and it's really good, but it would be brilliant if somebody updated that. I would love that. 100% love to see an updated version of that. So Odysseus was the king of Ithaca. He had to go off to war, the Trojan War, because he'd made an oath to do so. So you know the Trojan War, Helen of Troy, kidnapped by Paris of Troy. And then that's what started the Trojan War in the stories. You know, Troy, Brad Pitt as Achilles, that war. The Greeks versus the Trojans. So Odysseus sailing off to war, in my version of the story, is you starting your own business, finding the courage to do it, taking the risk to sail off into unknown lands, and to face whatever challenges come your way. So if we fast forward a little bit, they won the war. That's the Iliad. We're not really covering that, but they won the war and Odysseus was victorious. So this is you. You've started your own business. You did it. You've won that first war. You can return to base, live a prosperous life, but we know it's not as easy as that. So like Odysseus triumphed in his war, your early victories, they're like milestones to celebrate. Just milestones, mark them as triumphs, celebrate them, but don't get too carried away. It's not going to be hunky-dory. You're not going to return to the comfort of your base camp where you can just sit and envision a prosperous future. So Odysseus, he celebrated and he was like, yes, I am the bollocks, I won this war, blah blah. And that pissed the gods off. Number one, they love to be worshipped. They don't want anybody else taking credit for stuff. And a lifetime to you is like a blink of an eye to them. So the gods, Homer's gods, they're petty and narcissistic. A little bit like, or a lot like, some of the senior corporate arseholes that we will have to encounter. So the comparison can be made to the Greek gods. The Greek gods are the industries that we work in. And the servants of those gods are the corporate wankers who make a career out of working inside these corporate PLCs and basically being good at that game and not much else. There are amazing people that do these jobs too. I'm talking about a very specific type that we need to be wary of. And the industries themselves, so the industry as a god, which might be weird to think about, but the industry is the god. They don't care. They're not people. They're just machines, lumps of money that like to just keep rolling and fucking moving. So your gods, the industry gods, the machine of whatever industry you're in. So a good writer that shows what I'm talking about, I haven't made this up, I've taken this from another writer, so Neil Gaiman, in his book American Gods, he depicts industries as gods. So he's got media as a god, technology as a god, Vulcan, the god of weapons, which has adapted itself due to the modern worship of firearms and weapons. He's got lots of other gods in his story, but these are just some examples, and it's cool. You should check it out. It's American Gods. You can read it, or there's a TV show. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's good. You should watch it. And in the show, I like how the gods only really exist if people believe in them and worship them. So it makes sense that media, technology, guns, they're massive in modern times because people are like worship them. And the old gods, as Gaiman calls them, they're kind of dying out because people no longer believe in them and they've stopped worshipping them. And I kind of use this theory when my kids ask me, does Santa exist? You know, the real answer really is no. But you say that to kids, so now they're old enough, I'll say to them things like, well, is Jesus real? I personally don't think so, but millions of people do. So to them, he is real. Is Santa any different? If people believe, then he is real to them. So I tell them this, mainly so the oldest doesn't spoil it for the youngest or any other younger kids, but it does actually make him think that we should respect what others believe. So, industries being gods, there can absolutely be a god of plumbing, god of tiling, god of building, etc., etc. Those who live and breathe their trade are, in a way, worshipping these gods. If you watch American Gods, it might make sense a bit more what I'm saying. So similar to Gaiman's gods, people who worship these things, but may not, in the classical sense of that word, worship, they live it, so they're worshipping it. So to that god, they're like, I have all these worshippers. So Gaiman's gods, they're kind of anthropomorphized, which it allows them to weave them into his story, and it's particularly good for TV because you can say, right, that person there is the god of media or whatever. So it's really interesting, and it allows him to make statements about the values of these modern things that we worship. He doesn't have a god for tradespeople specifically, but it would be good actually if he did write more books, if he incorporated that, because you could definitely do it. So if you think about certain trades, you live your trade, whatever it is, small business, trade, whatever it is, in the style of Gaiman, that would be you worshipping your god. And your god would probably thrive because there's so many people that worship that particular trade. So you'd have to read American Gods to really understand what I'm saying. It kind of makes sense, but a trade is the god. You're worshipping your trade. So anyway, back to Odysseus. So when he won the war, he was seen as too vain. He was celebrating the Trojan War victory, and the gods, specifically Poseidon, was pissed off. They may have been jealous that this guy's just immortal and fucking some of us helped him and I should be getting the praise or whatever. So I do think maybe Poseidon specifically are a little bit jealous that this mortal has just won this war, and that's the kind of thing that small business owner might get, and you probably experience these. So jealousy and begrudgery from other people who assume that they're better than you or assume that they deserve what you've got, and they're going to make your life difficult. So don't let it bother you. Just stay true to you, similar to Odysseus in the story. Don't worship the industry gods or let others' jealousy or begrudgery get to you. Do your own thing and stick to your morals. So Homer's gods, fickle. Our industry gods can be fickle too. They're demanding your loyalty, just as the other gods demanded Odysseus's worship. We need to resist the temptations. Stick to your own values. Don't celebrate prematurely, which is what Odysseus did in the story. You haven't won. You've literally started your business. It might be a year or two old. You're still at the very beginning. You've not really won a war yet. There's a very long journey that you need to complete. So with Homer, he's basically saying, don't be too prideful. It's repeated a lot in Greek mythology. It's good advice. Pridefulness, arrogance, or just being mean, it does often backfire in real life. It will, at a minimum, the person who is like that, they're going to be lonely or haunted in the later years. Be kind and just try not to talk ill of other people or other companies, and just help everybody. So, Odysseus, he won the Trojan War. He celebrated. He pissed off Odysseus. He pissed off Poseidon. Poseidon was like, you shouldn't be like this. I'm going to punish you. So, Poseidon basically made Odysseus's journey home extremely difficult to challenge him. Odysseus does something else later on that really pisses Poseidon off, and we'll get to that. So, during his journey, he come across lots of different mythological creatures and other gods, and one of these was the Sirens. So we all know what Sirens are. They tried to lure Odysseus to their island, and if he'd succumbed, then he would have just perished and fucking smashed his boat all over the rocks to the island. So our version of Sirens, it's big money or money or other businesses, and they're saying, come to us, take our money, incorporate your business into ours, but we're going to severely limit you and how you belong to us. So, or they might swallow you up, spit you out like you never even fucking existed. So the Sirens of business, they're going to come calling with alluring promises. Just like the Sirens tried to tempt Odysseus. They're going to offer you things, or it's going to seem like you can do things. Collaborations, mergers, buyouts, whatever. It's going to seem seductive, but it could swallow your independence completely, and you'd be fucked. You'd be adrift like Odysseus. It might be tempting. Try to stay independent for as long as possible. So, a similar tempting offer that was made to Odysseus was Calypso. So Calypso was a goddess and a nymph. Beautiful. Very desirable, beautiful. She tried to seduce Odysseus, and it kind of worked. So nymph, we know the origins, and that's the origins of our word for nymphomaniac, blah blah. So she's beautiful. She's seducing him. He's having the best time ever on this island. She got him to live on the island with her. He's having the best time ever on this paradise island. Beautiful woman. But he needed to resist it. He needed to continue his journey and get back home. So your business might be promised things from, not necessarily goddesses, but things that seem beautiful or brilliant or paradise. Don't fall for it. You need to resist offers. Be true to yourself. Don't fold too early. So, where we might differ from Odysseus is that one day we might actually fold, and that might be the best decision. We don't have to leave it. So we might allow one of the gods to take the business away from us. It needs to be on our terms, though. Maybe you will, and maybe you won't give your business to anyone and dig in for the long haul. So to do this would be the equivalent of Odysseus finding his way home. And this might grant you special favour from your industry gods. Just bear in mind, there might be a time when we let Calypso take our business. But we don't need to. We can dig in, and we can live a life owning our own business and retire happy. The big reason that Poseidon was really pissed off with Odysseus is one of the things that Odysseus came across was a cyclops named Polyphemus. There's a giant man-eating cyclops isolated on his own island, all powerful on that island. Nobody can bother him. So Odysseus needed to get through this island, and he needed to be extremely careful. He needed to be very intelligent to escape from this Cyclops. So this would, to a small business, would represent your competition. They might be bigger than you. They would be able to eat you if they wanted to, and you are playing on their patch, but you don't have to play by their rules. So use your brain, bide your time, innovate, outmaneuver. Don't signpost what your plans are, and just like Odysseus did, let them be distracted by other things. Let them be distracted by what they think you're doing. Don't tell them. Don't worry about what other people think you're doing. They might say things or say, oh, he's fucking doing this and he's doing that. Let them think whatever they want. Don't try and prove yourself, because then you can outmaneuver them when you actually do show your hand. And obviously Odysseus' version of that was killing the Cyclops. So killing the Cyclops was a bad idea. As it turns out, the Cyclops was Odysseus' son. Nightmare. So Odysseus is majorly pissed off with... Poseidon is majorly pissed off with Odysseus now. So what this might represent to a small business, we're going to run into characters that don't actually deserve to be where they are. They may have been born with a silver spoon, Nepo babies. This is what Cyclops was. He was a god's son. So we're going to run into people who've had an easier route to success. This is true. This can happen. So people born into success, it can happen. And it does happen. So simply by having connections through parents or parents being successful, they're going to have a better chance at succeeding. They just are. People born into disadvantaged backgrounds, 100% proven, have less opportunities. It's a fact. So I think this is one of the reasons why it definitely does seem like so-called leaders or senior figures, they quite often are not very good at the job. This is my own personal experience and my own personal theory, that 1 in 10 bosses or leaders are actually worthy of that role and are actually good at the job. This is my experience, but I've got a feeling that might be pretty accurate. 9 out of 10 bosses shouldn't be doing what they're doing. So you're going to run into characters like Cyclops. You're going to end up pissing them off or hurting them simply by trying to survive yourself. And they're going to be able to pull strings and make your life fucking difficult. You need to be wary of these characters, and sometimes we might have to play the game and humour them a little just to avoid a battle where you may end up vastly outgunned just purely through their connections. So Cyclops crying to his dad caused even more problems for Odysseus. Poseidon was pissed off and he was really out to get Odysseus now. And he wasn't just looking to hurt him once. He wanted him to suffer. And unfortunately, we're going to run into people like that. They're going to enjoy seeing us fail. Don't mind them. Just keep doing your own thing. Surround yourself with positive people. If you're working with people who are negative or they're actually not support, just get rid of them. Cut them out. They might be your friends and you might still be able to talk to them, but you don't want them involved in your business. Poseidon tormenting Odysseus. I mentioned this before. It seems like a long time to him, but to Poseidon it was nothing. He might have even forgot he was doing it at one point, and then before you know it, 5 years had passed. So the industry you're in, it's been around for a very long time, and it's going to be around for a very long time when you're gone. So don't worry if things seem to be taking a long time. Things seem to be taking a time to settle, or it seems like you're constantly in rough waters, constantly going against the grain. Just keep going, keep moving forward. Every opportunity, like Odysseus did, even when you get pushed back, you might have to go back all the way back to where you started. Don't let it bother you, don't give up, just keep going, start again, fuck it. If we think about, there was another enchantress or goddess called Circe. She turned Odysseus' crew into pigs. She's putting on a display of like deception and power, and she's an interesting character. So she's powerful, a sorceress. She's representing a big threat, but actually that can be used as an ally. So in business, Circe symbolises like unforeseen circumstances or a crisis or an economic downturn, something that can really fuck you up. But unforeseen circumstances, crisis, economic downturns, it can really turn your business, which might have been doing okay, into a clusterfuck, if you will, a nightmare. All these external things that are happening, Nothing you can do about it. So to try and overcome, we need to adapt quickly, find creative solutions. If you've got a team, lead that team with resilience. What might seem like a bad scenario, it can be turned into an advantage. So if we keep our fixed costs low, as low as we can, for as long as we can, we'll be in a better place to make quick moves. So when these big things happen that affect everybody, we'll be in a good place to move quickly. We can turn everything around more quickly than the big boys. At one point, there are two sea monsters, Scylla and Charybdis. So these are like deadly threats, representing deadly threats in the story. And there's no way, you need to choose one. There was no way through the middle. So Odysseus had to choose how to handle this, and it's a fine balance between risk and caution, and that's definitely business. Which one do you choose? You need to balance that risk, risk and reward. So Scylla, which was like a monster, like three-headed monster, massive big beast, and this is representing overextending yourself. It might lead to losses. You get too close and you'll get eaten. And then Charybdis, which is excessive caution and missed opportunity. So this could result in stagnation. So get too close and you'll be pulled into Charybdis whirlpool and also get eaten. So navigating those two things requires a lot of careful planning, strategic decision making, and you may have to choose the lesser of two evils on more than one occasion. It's painful and it requires a bit of strength. We're going to have to do it in business. Now, along the way, Odysseus actually accepted help and guidance from some of the same gods that were also trying to sabotage him. So, as I mentioned before, they're petty. They argue between themselves, the gods, and you can use this to your advantage. The enemy of my enemy, as they say. So he often looked to Athena for guidance. She was like his mentor and she helped him through scrapes. She wasn't completely unconditional, though. She didn't help him all of the time. So if you're lucky enough to have a mentor, pick their brains and use their experience. But nobody can ever help you as much as you can help yourself. Nobody wants you to succeed as much as you want to succeed yourself. They're going to let you down. They're going to give you bad advice. Some people, like some of the gods did to Odysseus, they're going to actively try and sabotage you. So only trust yourself. Odysseus was smart, and the gods knew he was smart. They would often try to overpower or sabotage his journey, simply out of spite, just to entertain themselves. We're going to run into that. Sometimes he tried to negotiate with the gods. So, for example, when he come across Aeolus, the god of winds, Aeolus actually helped Odysseus out. He knew he was sailing across the sea, and he knew it would be impossible because Poseidon, the god of the fucking sea, he had it in for Odysseus. So he was like, do you know what? I'm going to help you just to piss Poseidon off. So he put all of the wind that would be a problem for Odysseus into this magic bag, and he was like, right, the only wind that's left is the wind that will sail you home. So don't open this bag, and you're sorted. Happy days. Don't open the bag, no matter what you do. You're fucked if you do. So he's like, thank you very much. So on the way, obviously, the crew, the mistake Odysseus made, he didn't tell the crew what was in the bag. He just said, don't open it. And obviously on the way, they got more and more curious. He says, I promise I'll let you see it when we get home. And they actually thought he's hiding something from us. So his crew ended up opening the bag. All the winds came out and Poseidon was able to fuck him off back to where he came from, which added years and years onto his journey. So what Odysseus did, he went back to Aeolus and said, is there any chance you could put the winds in the bag again? And Aeolus was like, nope. And so Odysseus, he didn't dwell on it. He didn't feel sorry for himself. He didn't complain. He was just like, do you know what? That was the past. He sucked it up, regrouped, continued his journey. He could have cried. He could have blamed the fucking idiots that opened the bag in the first place. But he didn't. I actually think he kind of accepted that maybe it was his fault. He didn't communicate with his team. He didn't tell them what was in the bag. He didn't tell them the reason he did it. He didn't tell them why he was speaking to Aeolus. He just didn't tell them anything. So they ended up fucking it up because he didn't communicate with him. And that's a good lesson for us. If you want to be a leader, the biggest thing about being a manager and a leader, you might not necessarily be good at the particular job that you're getting other people to do. You don't really need to be, you just need to be a good leader. And that's what I said before, I think only about 1 in 10 people, from my experience, have been good at that. Just be a good manager. Don't blame others. So we're going to face many, many challenges in your business. Sometimes it won't be your own fault, and sometimes it's going to be other people's fault. We can't dwell on it. It's gone. You've got to continue your journey with a positive attitude, like Odysseus did. Even if it sets you back years, the setback actually might cause you to change course completely and actually come across something else that ends up being better than what you were going to do in the first place. So that setback could end up being a positive. Just like the crew who opened the bag of wind. If you don't know the story, it sounds like ridiculous, but read the story or watch the TV show. It's good. So it's unforeseen circumstances. It can alter your course. It can add years to your journey. So when setbacks do occur, don't dwell on them. Adapt, regroup, see what else you can do. Positive out of it. You may change your business completely. Your business might start off as one thing, completely change down the road into something completely different and better. So Odysseus, he had his ability to overcome challenges. It's a recurring theme, and it's a good metaphor for us. He didn't give in. He basically retired as a business owner. His business was flourishing, and that's our goal, really. As mentioned, we might end up selling our business to someone else, but the ultimate goal is you've retired, your business is flourishing, still bringing money in. Happy fucking days. That's your epic voyage. Your resilience, your adaptability. This is going to guide your business through its own odyssey. You will be successful. There we go. Short one. I hope you enjoyed it. Be like Odysseus. Get one over on the gods of your industry. Thanks for listening to the very end if you're still here. If you are still listening, just a reminder that this podcast is independent. It costs me money to make it. So any support will be massively appreciated, and you can support if you go to patreon.com. Don't touch the cat. Patreon, which is patreon.com. Don't touch the cat. You can subscribe there, and that'll help me to get equipment and maybe one day enough money to spend more time on these things and make them better. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.